Welcome back, and welcome to Madness. This is what we've termed as a Madness board for years. If there's enough magnets on the board, it is a Madness board. Shows you how many, Nashville, a lot of Nashville on the board, a lot of Nashville magnets. This is why I have so many team logo magnets as well. So on the board, from top to bottom, are the teams as they currently sit in the standings. You have Vancouver, 73 points in 67 games. St. Louis, 73 points in 68 games. Calgary, 71 points in 65 games. And then Utah with 71 points in 67 games. Now, there's websites that'll tell you who has the best chance of making it to the playoffs. And right now, I have a feeling almost all of them are going to say St. Louis. And if they don't, they might want to update their models. So the Vancouver Canucks, sitting with 24 regulation wins, which is the same number as St. Louis and Calgary, and 2 more than Utah, would seem to be in the catbird seat. They have a game in hand on St. Louis. They've got 2 more points than Calgary. But Vancouver's upcoming schedule is daunting. First, they're at home against the Jets. We know how good the Jets are. Then they go on the road for 6. And it is the dreaded East Coast swing, which numerous times in this channel's existence has taken them out of Stanley Cup playoff contention. Not usually this late in the season, but we'll see. So it starts in St. Louis, which I'm aware is not on the East Coast. But then it goes through New York, goes through the Rangers. So you get the rematch you get the matchup of JT Miller against Pettersson. And I'm sure that'll get talked up a lot. Then they're in New Jersey, and then they go and play the New York Islanders on Long Island before playing Columbus and then Winnipeg. So they get 2 games against Winnipeg over the next 7. They have a 6-game road trip, and these are not going to be easy opponents. So one thing I did was I went through and thought, okay, so which ones are highly winnable games? And for me with Vancouver, there's only 3 that I labeled as highly winnable. And that starts here with this 3-game homestand. The first 2 games are at home against Seattle and Anaheim. Those are winnable games. Now, I'm not saying they can't win the other ones, just not quite as easy, right? Seattle's out of the hunt. Anaheim's pretty much out of the hunt. Vancouver is in the hunt, at least at this point. We'll see what happens after that road trip. But they should be motivated. Now, saying that, I've watched them in some games this year where that motivation should be there, and for whatever reason, it has not materialized. Now, after that, they end the homestand against Vegas. Vegas is not going to be easy at all. Then they go on the road for 2. They go to Dallas and Colorado. Not easy games there either. Then they come home, they play against Minnesota, San Jose, and Vegas. And San Jose is one that I said is highly winnable. You can make an argument for Minnesota if they still have the injuries they've been dealing with, but this is not an easy schedule. This is a road-heavy schedule, and there are some good teams and some teams still in the hunt that are going to be playing against Vancouver. And so the odds of Vancouver holding on to that playoff spot, I don't think are great. Because if we look at the St. Louis upcoming schedule, and I'm wearing blues because I like their chances. First, it starts in Nashville. So that's a winnable game, right? Then they come home and play against Vancouver, Chicago, Nashville, and Montreal. I did not grant Montreal as a highly winnable game. I did grant Chicago and San Jose as highly winnable because, or Nashville and Chicago. So that's 2 games against Nashville in the next 4. In fact, they got 3 games against Nashville in the next 6. If St. Louis can beat Nashville 3 times, they have an excellent chance of making the playoffs. And, Nashville's not in the hunt. So they have the 4 games at home, then they go to Nashville, then they go to Colorado. That's not an easy one. Colorado-St. Louis games can be tough, tense affairs. Then they come back home, they play against Detroit, Pittsburgh, and Colorado. Detroit and Pittsburgh, I'm qualifying as winnable games for them because of how St. Louis has been playing. As far as I'm concerned, right now, St. Louis looks better than do the Vancouver Canucks. And last night's power ranking update definitely accounted for that, which, of course, wouldn't have shown up on the Sunday morning one. And I'm not doing daily power rankings. That's just kind of a crazy idea, so it's not going to happen. But Detroit, Pittsburgh, and Colorado, then they go to Winnipeg and Edmonton. And then Seattle, that's a 3-game road trip right there. That's not easy, but Seattle, that's a winnable game. And then they finish their season at home against Utah. There is the possibility, depending on what happens between now and then, that game is to decide who does or doesn't make the playoffs in the West. Should be fun. Then you got Calgary. They have the 71 points, but they've only played 65 games. So they have 3 games in hand on St. Louis and 2 games in hand on Vancouver. I don't want to take Calgary lightly here. They could do it. But they have a 4-game road trip here starting tonight that's going to be difficult. First, they're in Toronto. Toronto should play better than they have been playing recently. They've got to get things going. Then they're in New York against the Rangers. So both Vancouver and Calgary have games at Madison Square Garden. Then they go to New Jersey. They go to the Islanders. So they have the same 3 games there that Vancouver has coming up as well. So Eastern-based teams could do a lot to decide how the playoff picture ends up rounding out in the West. Then Calgary comes home for 2 against Seattle and then Dallas. Seattle, I'm qualifying that as a winnable game, sure. Then they go on the road again for 3. Edmonton, Colorado, and Utah. So Utah is going to play a role. They played a role last night in beating Vancouver. Utah has a game left against St. Louis. Utah has a game left against Calgary. Should be fascinating to see how this goes down the stretch. And then after Utah, they come home. They play 2. They have Anaheim and then Vegas. Anaheim, is that a winnable game? Yes. Vegas is tough. Then they go on the road for 2. They go to San Jose and Anaheim. Those are winnable games. They come home and play against Minnesota. You might consider that a winnable game. San Jose and Vegas, the next ones. So, much like Vancouver here, Minnesota, San Jose, Vegas. Calgary has Minnesota, San Jose, Vegas coming in. And then Calgary finishes their season on the road in LA. That's not easy because LA is a fantastic team at home. One thing I don't want to undersell here too, though, is that when you get to the end of the season, there are top teams that will be resting stars down the stretch, maybe for those last few games. So maybe these games against Vegas for Vancouver and Calgary here, maybe Vegas has already cinched first place and they want to rest some guys for the playoffs. Maybe makes those games a little bit more winnable. But there's a lot you're counting on if you're a fan of Calgary or Vancouver in that situation. Then we got Utah. 67 games played, 71 points, 22 regulation wins. So they need to finish ahead of whoever they're against because regulation wins is the tiebreaker. But, I mean, they go to Edmonton next. Then they come home. They play against Buffalo. Winnable. Tampa. Tampa's not going to be easy. Detroit. Depends on how you look at Detroit at this point in time. And then they go on the road for 3 to Tampa, Florida, and Chicago. So they got 2 games against Tampa out of 3. That could be tough. Chicago, we know Chicago's kind of fun to watch, but we also know they're last on the power rankings, right? And then you got Florida stuck in the middle there. Florida, very good. They've had a couple of down games. I'm not buying it at all. They're going to get it together. And then Utah comes home, plays Calgary, LA, Winnipeg, Seattle, and Nashville. So that's a 5-game homestand. They've been playing better at home. They've had a better road record, I believe, than home record for a while, but they've been playing better at home lately. And of those 5 games at home, Calgary's a team that, they're fighting for that last playoff spot. LA's better at home than they are on the road, so the fact that they're coming into Utah should be a bit of an advantage for Utah. Winnipeg, we know how good Winnipeg is, and then Seattle. So Seattle is going to play against every team that's on this board between now and the end of the season. This is why I talk about a team playing spoiler. Seattle, with the right placed victory and the right losses here, could make a difference as to who does or doesn't make the playoffs. So after that homestand, which ends against Nashville, that's a winnable game, right? So Nashville shows up on the board 1, 2, 3, 4 times. 3 times with St. Louis and 1 time with Utah. Then they go on the road, Utah does, to finish the season with a 3-game road trip in Dallas, Nashville, and then it finishes in St. Louis. So when you look at the schedule, to me, 7 of the games for Utah are highly winnable out of 15. 5 out of 17 for me with Calgary are highly winnable. 8 out of 14 of the Seattle game or St. Louis games are highly winnable. And 3 out of 15 for Vancouver are highly winnable. So that's just my mathematician, non-scientific way of looking at it. Just looking at where teams are in the standings and saying, you know what, this is a game that this team should win, or this is a game that this team probably doesn't, or maybe will be a little more difficult. But to me, it does appear Vancouver has the toughest schedule from here. And it also kind of backs up something I've said about Vancouver in that they're not winning the games that they should. And this is where it really shows up. Is now they have 2 games left against Winnipeg, 2 games left against Vegas. They have a 6-game road trip. This is a really difficult schedule, and they haven't given themselves any cushion at all in that race for the final playoff spot in the West. So it's going to be difficult. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as to which team you think is the most likely. So if I had to handicap the odds right now, I would say the most likely would be St. Louis to get that last playoff spot. I kind of want to say Calgary second, although Utah does have the easier of the 2 schedules in my opinion. I kind of feel like Vancouver is the least likely to hold that last playoff spot at the end of the year just because this schedule is so difficult. They can come out of that 6-game road trip, and if they win, say 4, let's say they go 4-1-1 on that 6-game road trip, that will change things dramatically. But that would be assuming that this team can put together night after night after night the kind of effort they're going to need to if they're going to make the playoffs. And it has been an inconsistent effort from the Vancouver Canucks. And I mean, when we get into the back-to-back question as well, the Canucks are 1-8 in the second half of back-to-backs. So it is a difficult, daunting task for the Canucks. But let me know your thoughts. Who do you think holds that last playoff spot when the dust settles? Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. I will talk to you again soon.